Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, the number one Minnesota Vikings morning show. Full disclosure, pretty sure we're the only Minnesota Vikings morning show. So we got that going for us. I am Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com. I am also the owner of the Purple Territory Radio Network and a nifty new account on Periscope, where I've been doing some videos in what I call the halftime show for each game. It is this called the cigarette break, and then my daily videos about loose ends, tidbits, Vikings news is the Johnson Ginnet, because I'm horrible at naming things. So I'm excited, and I'm here with Joe Oberle, who is the editor for Purple PTSD and Vikings Territory, as well as a writer for The Sports Post. Gut reaction time for the game. You know, I'm actively aware that I give the impression that I'm all over the map emotionally when it comes to this team, that I go from being damn near ready to sell all the websites to thinking, ooh, nobody's going to want to play this Vikings team. So I'm tempering my excitement, but really, to be completely honest with you, it's more relief than anything else. They had to win that game. They did it in an impressive fashion. Obviously, we'll talk about that, but my gut reaction was just relief and kind of just saying, wow, look at what this team can do when they have all components firing on decent cylinders, from the offense to the defense to special teams. It was the most complete game of the season, and so it's good to see that they didn't completely crater with the DiFilippo move. It appeared to work, and I'm just super relieved and excited to see what happens next week. What are your just gut thoughts on that win, Mr. Oberle?
How the hell am I supposed to put a wet blanket on you if you're going to be all over the map? Because I can't find you.
It doesn't take much.
It was. I was nervous a little bit going in about Stefanski, and it's just the NFL's so goofy. Suddenly they come out and they score 21 points in the first quarter, which is more points than they had in the last 4 first quarters or something like that.
And more than the last 2 games combined.
So someone please explain to me how DiFilippo was that bad and all of a sudden Stefanski's that good. I have no idea what the hell is going on that prompted this, but we're all probably putting too much on OC or whatever. I don't know, but that's beside the point. I was happy to see him win. I was happy to see him win in deciding fashion. The defense was lights out except for one play that Zimmer took on himself. And that was great. The offense came to play finally. Kirk Cousins, we'll talk about that later. But I turned to the person next to me in the press box more than once and said, this Miami team is really, really not good. And at least they weren't playing that good. Granted, they were 7-6. So what? They played like the Vikings had the previous week, or just when they come in flat on one of their typical games, and that's possibly because they had the big win the previous week against New England. Who knows?
Yeah,
but they were bad. The Vikings could do anything they wanted.
Yep.
Especially on offense, the holes were so huge for the running backs. And,
yep.
And it was amazing. It was frustrating that they forgot how to throw the ball to Adam Thielen, but that's a fantasy football gripe, so I won't go any further on that. But I'm pleased. I want to see it again. I want to see it desperately again before I really get back on the bandwagon and start leading it. But part of me has been looking around, and the last 2 games we saw after the Vikings games were the Rams were looking like crud,
yeah.
And the Saints having another week of just really poor performance on offense. Sluggish.
12-9 was that 4 field goals?
Yes, and no, it wasn't. But
it wasn't? Okay.
No, they tried for a 2-point conversion and the the other team picked it off and took it to the house for 2 points the other way, which is kind of cool. But so it all depends on if you're peaking at the right time. If that's what's going on with the Vikings, it's very exciting to think about. I mean, I don't trust this team to put together. They have to put together 3 now, and then they'd have to put another 3 together to win it all. But all of a sudden, it looks like it's possible because suddenly, the Saints are struggling against a Panthers team that's lost like 6 games in a row. So it's like this league is so screwy. I will. Yeah. If I see it again this week, this kind of dominance against another team that's probably packed it in, that's fine. But I just want to see the Vikings come and play with that efficiency for another week in a row. Then I'll say, okay, we can go on. We can go back to the U.S. Bank and we can take care of business with the Bears and put some doubt in their mind. And then all bets are off maybe for the playoffs.
Yeah, I've gotten some crap from readers who didn't necessarily like my style of sardonic/sarcastic depression in regards to this team. I wrote a couple articles last week saying, this very well could change, and maybe the Stefanski thing will be the impetus for that change. But based on 34 years on this planet, being a fan of this team, I just didn't see it happening because good things don't happen to the Vikings, especially this late in the season. But I keep going back to like the 2008 Giants and saying that even though the season has up into, let's ignore the Dolphins game, so last week, even though the season had been a massive disappointment, the reality is that the Vikings have played every team outside of the Cowboys that are going to make the playoffs, and they've been in every one of those games, and they arguably should have won each of those games, outside of maybe the Rams because the defense was just getting completely run over, but even that game ended with a Cousins fumble when they could have tied it up at the end. And then you look at the Saints. They shut down Drew Brees, it's going to be between him and Mahomes for the MVP. The Seahawks, that game was a lot like the playoff game with the missed field goal. I mean, the offense for the Seahawks was non-existent. Unfortunately, the Vikings' offense was non-existent as well.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say they still dominated the Vikings in that game. And, the Seahawks did. So I think you got to temper that one a little bit. And
it showed that the defense can hold Russell. The kryptonite for this defense has always been mobile quarterbacks, and despite the fact that he's become more and more of a pocket passer, Russell Wilson obviously still puts up a lot of yards on the ground. He had that huge run against the Vikings late in the game. So it's just defensively, it's encouraging to see that they can play with anybody. It's just a matter of the offense. And this game did show that, I said this is the reality. We're going to have to deal with it for the next 3 years, depending on what happens with Cousins' contract after that. But he's going to throw devastating pick sixes. I mean, that's the third one this season. He leads the league in total turnovers.
Yes, he's got more pick sixes this season than Aaron Rodgers does in his career. So,
and that's the only thing with the playoffs being a game of inches and all of that. I just worry that that's how the season is going to end. But to try to be as positive as possible,
Come on, Joe. You're already worrying about how the season would end in the playoffs.
I cannot ever be happy. I always,
my God,
even when they win, I think about, man,
that you were happy during your intro. I could hear it in your voice. I was going to say something, and now you're already worrying about throwing a pick six in the playoff to end our season.
When that happens,
I throttle you.
When that happens, I'm going to say, see. No, but I do worry that is Cousins' propensity for the mistakes is still a problem.
Alive and a Vikings fan during the Mike Tice years?
Yeah.
Enjoy the season.
I can't. I really wish I could. I don't know why I even chose this as a career path, to be honest. But no, I will be completely honest, and I don't think we've ever really talked about this. But for me, it all boils down to getting that first Super Bowl, and anything else other than that just bothers the hell out of me. I can't enjoy. I mean, I do enjoy it. Like you said, I was happy. It was a great game to see, but then I always look at the bigger picture because I just want that so bad
Joe, come on. You're speaking to someone who's been around for the 4 Super Bowl losses and witnessed every one, and every one of those NFC Championship losses, and wants only one before he dies. That's part of all of us. So in the meantime, you have to enjoy the excitement of the potential of the Vikings getting in the playoffs and extra games and taking on it and the attention. You just have to revel in it and know that it could happen. I mean, it's just like I don't do this to yourself. Enjoy this. I mean, they played well this weekend. And they should have. If they would have come out flat for any reason, then you would have reason to concern and start looking to the draft. But they did what they were supposed to do. So I'm going to give them
that's exactly it. Because you on the Friday's 5 Furious Facts, you talked about the Dolphins being in like the 20s, the low 20s from most categories, offensively and defensively. But they lead the league in total turnovers, so that must be what has kept them in a lot of these games, that and a soft schedule. And so that's exactly it. The Vikings did what they had to do, but they did get the monkey off their back of not beating a winning team, regardless of how good or bad they were. It was big. Regardless of how good or bad the Dolphins were, the Vikings, again, they showed that fight that you and I have talked about a lot, that we didn't see a lot this season. So it is very encouraging. I'm happy in a way, but yeah, I just I posted this on Twitter, but I got a new iWatch or Apple Watch and a new phone, so I can do more video stuff. And I was doing a ECG, an electrocardiogram.
Was that for real? Yours? I saw that.
That was not a joke. That was real.
Oh my.
And so I was doing it while Cousins threw that pick 6, and you can actually see on the chart that my heart, I died for a second.
I thought, where is he getting these charts and graphs? If that's his really heart, we have serious issues here.
I think I tagged it. This team is going to kill me, and it very well could.
Oh my God! You're not allowed to watch any games the rest of the season
without a defibrillator nearby.
Exactly.
So, how much do you put on? You kind of prefaced this and said you don't know how much of it was Stefanski, but you have to think that. I mean, at one point the Vikings had 101 yards passing and 101 yards rushing.
Oh, it's the end of the first quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, Cousins had a perfect passer rating he was 7. Well, I guess I could go right into one of my tales of the tape for today. It was Cousins 7 for 7, 101 yards, a touchdown for 158.3, the highest possible quarterback rating you can get at the end of the first quarter. And he led the Vikings to a 21-0 lead. Cousins unfortunately finished the game 14 of 21 for 215 yards, 2 touchdown passes, 1 pick, and a 112 rating. What the heck? I know. I mean, that first quarter, they did absolutely nothing wrong. There was one penalty in the first series. I can't remember. It was like a holding on one of the linemen, and we never did get the name. And that was the only mistake this team made. 5 to 6 yards of crack on the run. Cousins was finding receivers. What's his name? The touchdown by Latavius Murray. He steps outside, puts a juke on a guy's in the end zone.
Yep.
And after a while, you have to say this other team is just they were not even anywhere near making plays, and you know that they were down. I go back to this time and time again about how you have to be emotionally up, and you can't always be. And after they had that huge Miami miracle the previous week, winning over their nemesis, the Patriots, on the last second, Cal State or Cal versus Stanford, banned lateral play. They were all pumped up, and they just came out flat. And then Cousins put them back in the game with the pick 6, and they came back out. Then the defense held to a field goal right before half, which was huge. But then they had that first play of the second half, and Zimmer took it on himself. But boy, all of a sudden, everybody and your heart was probably doing palpitations at that point. And so you're wondering. But then what you saw was the Vikings were a much better team, and they just came out. The defense, 6 straight series punts, nothing, not a darn thing out of them. for the defense just clamped down on them, and the Vikings virtually then just moved on to a huge victory. So
it was the most.
What happened to Cousins, Joe? What happened to Cousins?
Well, that's the question. Like I said, I think he's just prone to that for whatever reason. I mean, the corner completely read what he was doing. And I think what was super encouraging, more so than even the final score, was how the game progressed. To see that momentum shift and to think it's, oh my God, they're gonna blow this game against a team that is like 1-7 on the road and has all these negative stats. And they, like you said, they clamped down on defense, holding them to a field goal before the half was huge. And I thought it was really great that Zimmer and Edwards were extremely aggressive, especially in the second half. They blitzed like 5 or 6 times. That led to the sacks, which we'll get into. But the fact that not only the team but Cousins seemingly got back on track after a lot of times this season that him having a mistake and then just shutting down afterwards was amazing. I mean, that throw to Robinson seemed to shift the momentum back to the Vikings, and then they never gave it back. So I thought it was great that they had that struggle, and it wasn't just them beating up on a bad team. Maybe that's me trying to make a positive out of a negative and saying, well, they let a bad team get back into things.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, I think it showed that they do have heart and that they can overcome mistakes if they have to. Again, against a bad team, but it's. I'm not trying to be overly negative.
They are going to have to overcome mistakes.
Have you heard? The Cousins is going to throw a pick 6 in the playoffs. It's all over the Twitters.
It's so funny. I mean, it was a terrible play by him. I don't know. I don't know why he threw it. I don't know. It's almost like he knew this. He thought this was going to be open no matter what, and I'm going there right away. Because it reminds me of that, or brings to mind that play by Jared Goff on Sunday night, who was being tackled and then throws this ill-advised, just throw it away thing as he's falling down and goes into the other team's hand and he races it into the end zone or whatever. It's like,
yeah. I
mean, you can't do those panic plays. You got to learn to eat it. You just got to eat it and live to fight another day. So what it means is every quarterback, if they're under duress for a time, is going to do that. The unfortunate thing is Cousins wasn't under duress when he made that decision.
No, you're right. It seemed like it was a very scripted play. He assumed that, I think he was throwing to Diggs, that Diggs would be open, and I mean he dropped back and that was the first thing he did. He just threw it right there, and the corner jumped it. How much stock do you put into? I've been hanging out a little bit on Twitter during the games, and people, even in the live chat, that was a big part of the conversation, was Cousins is so much better under center than he is out of the shotgun. And I would love to use our Pro Football Focus Elite account. I'm going to try to do that this week to see if there's any truth to that. But I've seen a ton of people, a ton of writers basically saying stop, having him go out of the shotgun so much because it just doesn't work. And a caveat to that too is we've really hammered this point for a while. Cousins, it seemed, had a lot more bootlegs and rollouts and stuff, and they seemed to work, and that's something that we wanted.
You're making 2 points here, and they're both very good. But let me address the first one. I think it's a small sample size on under center before we can make too many. I'd love to see what you come up with when you look at that, because he just hasn't spent a lot of time under there this year.
Yeah.
He did play much better, and Zimmer addressed that yesterday when they asked him about under center, and he says, "Well, a lot of people are going to do better under center, because when you go under center, it kind of belies maybe there's a running play coming, and or implies, and he says you get suck." So he said you get sucked from the linebackers, you get sucked from the secondary, you get a lot of people sucking up, trying to sell out on the run and try to stop him because they got to make a decision on their reads, and that's probably one of their keys. And so I think that helps them, and it certainly helps them if you've got a running back that you can then do play action with, and get outside, in which you establish the run. I mean, this is also basic, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think of Zimmer possibly being vindicated here? I know you did a Periscope yesterday all about his comments, and I listened to it, and I was, I couldn't respond because I was too late. But I want to say, I'm going to take the other side of that. I'm going to say that you can read that both ways. I don't think he was totally, throwing DiFilippo under the bus or throwing shade on him or whatever. I mean, they asked him a question, and he just kind of says, well, this and this happened, and you could interpret it, and as a lot of writers did, as it was shade, or you could just interpret him answering the question honestly. This is kind of what I was looking for. And if that's shade on DiFilippo, then shame on him. He should have been doing it earlier. It's what his head coach wanted him to do.
Yeah, let me read those quotes because I had them for today too, and so the people that didn't see the Periscope can know the context. So there's two quotes that I pulled from his post-game presser. First one is, I thought offensively we did a nice job mixing things up, but taking our shots and being aggressive and being physical and running the football. Rushed for 200 yards and scored touchdowns the first 3 possessions of the game. I thought he did well in regards to Stefanski. He was very calm, never got panicked at all during the day. And the second part was Stefanski said something Zimmer said, he said something like, I need to get back on schedule at one point during the game, but it wasn't really anything chaotic. I can see the chaotic thing not necessarily being, that makes sense regardless of the situation.
Did we ever get any indication that it was chaotic with?
Yeah, that's the panic part was something that stood out to me, and no, I didn't really get
every shot I've ever seen him on the sidelines. He's calmly, behind his thing. Now maybe he's right behind this big Perkins menu. He's going. Ah!
Well, I could see, and I think I said this on Periscope, that like when you have a guy in DiFilippo who was really hammering home that nobody wants to run the ball more than I do, and he brought that up a lot, and then seemingly abandoned that midway through usually the second quarter, maybe that could be interpreted as panic, just because he's basically going against what he said, what the game plan was initially, and also apparently what Zimmer has been telling him, which was run the damn ball. And so I could see that maybe because Zimmer, and also Zimmer, really quickly, Zimmer has a history of saying things in the media that he ends up regretting. So that's how I interpreted it. But
I could see the second one being pointed at him and maybe stating a difference. I saw a quote from Mark Craig from the Star Tribune, got from Chile, or the Vikings' old coach. What's Childress' first name?
Brad.
And he said that the one thing he knew about Stefanski is nothing rattles the guy. In all the years that he was there with him together, he said he's just this calm, cool thing. So then, maybe that's just who Stefanski is, and maybe that's he was pointing out. But yes, I will go that far as to say that might have been a little shade. The previous comment was just him saying this is what we did. We were physical. And that's what he was looking for. The fact that it still boggles my mind, and DiFilippo was obviously paying for it, why he could not do what Zimmer wanted. Now, does this mean that Zimmer's stripped down offense and back to fundamentals, ground and pound on offense and stuff it in their face on defense is going to win games the rest of the way? It should. It's kind of playoff football, but it's no guarantee. So so if he is getting on a high horse, Zimmer, settle down. You can be knocked off that thing so damn easy in this league. It's amazing.
And I could see maybe too him not necessarily doing it to talk crap about DiFilippo, but more saying that for people, coming off of the week where I say he made a joke. He said, "My daughter loves Twitter" during his post game. Everyone laughed. I'm sure you were in the room, pointing to what his daughter had said, defending him, and so that clearly was part of what was in his mind, and maybe he just more meant that as, this is what I've wanted to do and see it successful. I'm a good, you know what I mean? Like to more combat the negative stuff people have said about him, lesser than just being rude to DiFilippo, even if they're part and parcel of the same thing.
Speaking of that, Joe, that's on your agenda, but it's way down the line. But I wanted to get to it as well. I read a story.
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the Pioneer Press. Just stop it, people. Please stop it. The fact that, Ziggy's response was great. What's my response to that? He says, you shouldn't even be asking this question. You know what I think about Zimmer. That's what he told the reporter.
Oh, wow.
Bob Sansinger. And that was down at the bottom of his story. At first, he's got to, write the story where is Zimmer in trouble, because he was able to ask this question. The only reason Zimmer's in trouble or anybody's thinking of is because you're asking the question. What it comes. And Ziggy basically said that. I said it. I wrote a story on which quarterbacks are in trouble about 3 or 4 weeks ago for the Sports Post, and I included Zimmer in there as saying this is out there, and I'm saying it's nonsense, and it is.
Okay.
Now you make a move to fire your OC. That's pretty drastic. You better be successful with that move, or then you can start talking about it. But a week after a win with this new changes you made that are very dramatic, and
a statement win.
Being a positive change, is that the time to write this story? God.
And you asked me about my opinion on it. I will bring up, I did write an article about Zimmer's seat warming earlier in the season, and it went viral for maybe all the wrong reasons, but I also only wrote that article because I had seen Charlie Walters from the Pioneer Press saying that. And my rationale was, I don't think that's fair right now. I do think that if the Vikings are 500 or below, because the defense is as bad as it was in the beginning of the season, then you can talk about it. Because I felt at the time that this defense got Zimmer's fingerprints obviously all over it. It's the defense that he's wanted to build. He sacrificed some positions perhaps on offense to build that defense. And if they're playing like that, how do you fix it? You can't draft another corner or another player to fix it. And to his credit, this defense is playing very, very well. And so even with them, let's say, missing out on the playoffs, I wouldn't have even called for Zimmer to be on the hot seat.
You said
because
it right.
It's the defense. So
let's look at what Zimmer did. He the talk out there, the speculations that they hired DiFilippo because his offense, or the offense he was a part of last year, took Zimmer's defense apart in the NFC Championship game. So you bring him in and you find out what we did wrong. So maybe that's kind of what they did. And then Zimmer brought in all this new stuff to the defense and confused the heck out of them.
Overthought it.
So they played all these poorly defensive games coming out of the gate, and we were wondering, what the heck is this? This is not the defense the Vikings had last year. So what did Zimmer did? He simplified it, and they have been ascending ever since that point. That is an adjustment. That is a coach looking at what his changes he made, saw that they were wrong, fixed them, and now has results from it. That is not a fireable offense. That is not, and that's basically what you were saying. You got to let this stuff play out before you start doing this. But the world we live in, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody else, is to jump on a story that may not be there yet, but may possibly be coming and be the first one 3-4 weeks out. Well, then now here's the second thing he did. The offense wasn't working. They're struggling mightily. They got this $84 million quarterback who looks like an expansion version of Christian Ponder.
I was going to say that, yeah.
And so what do? They say, okay, we got to let the offensive coordinator go because this is not working with him. It's not working. And so suddenly he looks like he did earlier in the season when they let the guy play. So got to see more of it. But that's an adjustment. That's a decision made, and some people were calling it out of desperation, perhaps because their season was spiraling down with 2 losses in a row. But it's also maybe the right move to make your team better. So I don't think that those are things you say what you will about Zimmer's style and what he says about people and in the media, rather, maybe in the locker room. Say all that you want, but I don't think you can fault him for making moves like that mid-season to try to salvage a season for a very talented roster.
Well, think about how this, now looking back at it, they parted ways with Norv Turner. Pat Shurmur came in and resurrected his career as a head coach, and now he's done the same thing. It's been one game, but and a lot of it could be timing, but like you said, that's how the NFL works. I mean, the offensive line had played well the last couple weeks. They looked They were opening holes. It's earlier in the season. The running game, I could see why they would abandon it because they were getting hit 3-4 yards in the backfield, and it just wasn't happening. But those holes against the Dolphins, I could have picked up 100 yards. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, you've seen my heart. I'm in my prime.
Yeah, we'd have had to get the paddles out about the 30-yard line.
So let's talk about, before we get into the tales of the tape to end the show, let's talk about the NFC playoff picture a little bit. A lot of crazy action over the weekend. Obviously, the Eagles are becoming a threat, especially considering the Cowboys getting shut out and the play of Dak Prescott. They have a legit defense, but the offense is just struggling. I think the Eagles play the Texans next week. I forget who the Cowboys played, but the Vikings can clinch this weekend, I believe, if the Redskins lose and who would it be then? I had this written down. The Eagles lose. Yeah, it would have to be the Eagles and the Redskins.
Right.
Both
and
losing.
The Vikings have to win. So
the Vikings have to win.
Yeah, then they'll be a game and a half behind with only one game left. So yes, they can clinch if those two lose. But then, because what's her name? Carolina lost last night, so they are now a game and a half behind.
Yep. The Eagles play the Texans, and the Redskins play the Titans. You would assume the Redskins eventually, they're on like their 20th quarterback, that they're going to have to lose at some point.
Soon. They managed a nice win last week, though. They came and beat the Jaguars. That was pretty impressive. I did not see that come. Of course, the Jaguars are a hot mess. There's no two ways about that.
Big time. With the Eagles, I have a couple questions about this. The first one being, and I don't fault you for not having an answer to this because I don't think I put it on the agenda. I did it on the first one, but
anything, Joe. I'll say something about anything. Might not be anything.
Why do you think that Foles has been so successful? I've been scouring these TV shows that ESPN on my Hulu that loves to talk East Coast everything, and it seems like the consensus is something similar to the Vikings on defense that we just discussed, which was basically that Foles, they simplify the playbook for Foles. And because they have playmakers and he's comfortable and knows those playmakers from being there, they have that success. And I don't, they try to force this quarterback controversy narrative. Obviously that's not going to happen, but they're paying and going to have to continue to pay Foles a pretty penny to stay as the backup, which makes sense because big time. And Wentz is injury prone too.
Well, to answer the question, are you done asking it?
I guess my heart's skipping a beat.
Oh no! Well, I think a little bit of it is we forget that how badly Foles looked at the beginning of the season before Wentz started playing. Let's back. I think he might have been two games, and he was terrible.
Really bad in the preseason too. He got benched in the preseason, I think.
Yes, he did. And what I think you're looking at is he came in at the last minute here this week. Wentz wasn't ruled out till late, and you didn't have any recent tape to look at him on. So that's part of it. He was able to. I think you nailed it. They probably simplified it. They figured out what Foles does well, and
3 passes for over 50 yards. I think all to Nelson Aguilar,
which is what he was doing. Which he was doing in the playoffs last year, just winging it. That's what he was doing against the Vikings. For
big time.
I think they should call them Fultz from now on, or or Wentz or something. But anyway, they're going to have to keep them handcuffed together because the way the luck that Wentz is having. Anyway, I don't know. It shocks me. I couldn't believe how. What's the deal with this Rams defense?
Yeah.
What the heck?
A lot of stuff on TV about the Rams being exposed, especially if they don't get the number 1 seed, which is looking like they're not going to.
It's been happening all year. The Vikings lit them up. They brought in all these guys to their defense. Ndamukong
Suh, Aaron Donald's there.
isn't Aqib Talib there? Isn't he on their team? And
yes, he is.
they brought in, it's like, my God, they had a good defense. They just made it great. And they're certainly not the Bears defense. But anyway.
Really quickly about that, I wondered before the season started if the Rams were going to end up with too many cooks in the kitchen or too many changes. And, it's always, as we always see, it's hard. The defense especially is such a cohesive unit, and when you change key pieces to that, and the pieces you replace them with are alphas, guys that are typically used to running their respective defenses or teams, that doesn't always work. That's why the Pro Bowl allows 5,000 points. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think Aqib Talib is injured, but still.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's amazing that it's back to the Eagles. In the Vikings playoff chances,
56%.
Which I think is low. But
me too.
I really, but that's the optimist in me saying that, because the Vikings should be able to just clean the Lions' clock this week. Get on them early. This is the team. They had 9 sacks the other day. There's another tails of the tape against who did we just play? Who did the Vikings just play?
Dolphins.
Thank you. And the last, they're the first. Let's see.
Since 1990.
Since 1990, have 2 games with at least 9 sacks. And the last team they did it was 10 sacks against the Lions. So they should be able to do that again this week. But anyway, I really want them to win these 3 games. I want them to just knock the crap out of the Lions, come in back to U.S. Bank feeling very high on themselves, and win in. And I do think they can have a chance to get that 5th seed, because the Seahawks have to play the Chiefs this week.
And then they play the Cardinals. So, yeah, if we went out and they lose, we get that 5th seed. The question is, well, it depends on what happens. I saw that the Cowboys had a 93% chance of winning the division, and that seems really high, considering they're a game ahead of the Eagles and how they've been playing.
The Eagles and Redskins play each other, so.
Okay, that helps then.
Yeah.
But, so if we were the 5th seed, we'd end up playing probably the Cowboys, which would be great. Eventually, we're going to have to play the Bears. To be completely honest with you, the Bears are the team that I fear most in the playoffs, and that was going to be my question.
So do I. That's why I want the Vikings to come in flying high and then beat them and put a seeded doubt in their mind. I would love. I don't want the Bears to have home field advantage. I want them to have as little as possible, because I think they're pretty tough in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get them on the road, and then you see Trubisky, second-year quarterback, in a hostile environment somewhere. So I'm hoping they're gonna. They're not going to lose both of their games, and I think they're playing like San Francisco or somebody this week, pretty easy. But I would rather play the Cowboys, because they are a team, they're a good team. They got a great defense, and their offense,
rush defense.
Up and go. How did they get shut out by the Colts last week?
I don't know.
Crazy thing to think about. But I'd rather play them. They're just a little more skittish than the Bears are. The Bears are playing with a hell of a lot of confidence, and they're beatable. The Giants beat them last week, but so I'd like to see them get on the road and maybe get knocked out. And I don't have any fear of the Rams anymore. And I certainly, and the Saints. Now, granted, they'll be tough at home. They're is Drew Brees getting old? What's going on there?
Ironically, and everyone's talking about him being the MVP. I mean, he's got a 77% completion rate, which is insane. They have a lot of weapons, but again, I said this earlier in the show, the Vikings held them to 125 yards. They held Russell Wilson to 72. I mean, I do think, despite all my negativity, maybe we should change the website to Purple Bipolar Disorder. The Vikings very well could be peaking at the right time. They could be the team that nobody wants to face.
There's part of me that feels that once, but I don't want to say it, because there's part of me that's been kind of thinking, God, if they do like, a cliched team that's playing their best at the right time in late December and January, they stay healthy, which they are pretty healthy right now. They came out of that Miami game with Howdy getting a nick because there was nobody on the other team that was doing anything. But if they keep that rolling, I mean, they're going to be a force to reckon with. Unfortunately, all their games will be on the road, but that's what this season has wrought.
And that is where my fear of that pick six or turnover comes from, because it's just it's going to be tight. The defense is going to limit the other team's ability to really dictate the game and blow up. And as long as the offense can try to limit those mistakes, things could be great. Let's get into
you can't ever count on about this team, and you'd like to. I mean, I think certainly I believe you would, just knowing you and your fandom, is that the Vikings are just a shoo-in to do anything.
Yeah.
They're just not. Their defense is dominant. Their defense right now, they dominated on Sunday, and they've been played their best game. They've been rising to this point, but it's not. I don't think the rest of the way are we going to go in there and say, oh God, the Vikings are going to kill these, and it will happen. They never have risen to that. Even when last year they were 13-3, we should have felt that way, but we didn't. So the Vikings have not been like that since the 70s. So we cannot count on that. But on the other side of the coin, we get to go in excited as hell and hopeful and see some good ball games and hopefully some playoff games.
The only game I was confident in last year was the Eagles game, so there you go. Maybe that'll explain my melancholy. We've touched on some of the tales of the tape. Let's get into those. I will really quickly. I always do a fortunately or unfortunately. So fortunately they win, unfortunately something, or unfortunately they lost, but fortunately something. And fortunately, unfortunately, obviously is the pick six. I've hammered on those mistakes the entire show, so we can skip that. But
I can talk about. I got this one from Chip Scoggins, and I wanted to mention it because I didn't mention it in my game wrap. But props to Marcus Sherels. Marcus Sherels, 7-yard return that flipped the field at the right time, marked his 29th return of 20-plus yards since 2012, the most in the NFL in that span. Sherels is the only active NFL player with at least 200 career punt returns and 8 or fewer fumbles. He's lost only 2 fumbles, 231 career returns, none since 2016. I didn't give him enough love, so I wanted to now, and that came from Chip Scoggins in the Star Tribune. So that he had a great game, and I heard Zimmer talking to him how they kind of challenged him to be more aggressive because he had been kind of conservative in the previous couple games. Zimmer said that he fair caught at least 1 or 2 that he thought he could have returned, and so they kind of said, "Hey, go for it a little bit here." And that could be a feast or famine thing. You can get burned by being too aggressive back there, but man, he flipped the field at the right time and really, really turned things around for
that. You could argue that's what swung the momentum back in the Vikings' favor. That was a huge turning point. It's funny. Every year it seems like he's on the bubble whether or not he'll make the team, and he always ends up making the team, and he's always such an asset. He's consistent. You never worry about him fumbling the ball. I mean, he's obviously done it, but I'm not skipping any beats when I know he's back there. And so it's just he's got to be the best punt returner this team has ever had, for sure.
I gave up on counting him out a couple years ago. I finally learned my lesson saying he wasn't going to make it. He keeps.
I thought when he wanted more money that might do it. But also he's from the Big Ten, so I wanted to throw that up there.
He did. He even played some cornerback this season. Fortunately, fortunately, unfortunately.
There you go. If he was 2 or 3 inches taller, he would be a starter. He's always in great position. He's just really small.
Yeah, he might have to be taller, and he'd have to be a little stronger. He's a skinny little. So
big time.
Yeah.
And I will really quickly, since we're on the topic, shout out to special teams in general.
Exactly.
Bailey made his kicks.
Yep.
I was really down on Prefer this last week, and it doesn't salvage a lot of the stuff that I talked about, but they were really on point. So
a couple more tails. Offense had 220 yards rushing, 100 in the first quarter by Cook. It was a beautiful thing to behold. It's their highest rushing output this season, which is not a surprise. It was 136 for Cook, which is a career high. It's funny that we're saying that. I mean, a couple weeks ago he had his first touchdown reception of his career, and I kind of scratched my head. Oh, that's right. He only played 4 games last year, and he's only played like 5 this year. So,
and you shouted out in your article what I said. I've been saying that Cook looks on every play like he could house it. He's got all this pent up, which is understandable. I mean, I'm reading it a little bit into it, but it reminds me of vintage AP, where you feel like, man, that guy's got a full head of steam. He's fast, but he's also quick. Like he gets up to his top gear really quickly. There was a run where he had to get to the edge to get around a linebacker, and it's just he goes from 0 to 20 some miles per hour so fast.
And any offensive coordinator, now granted, DeFilippo didn't have him for a lot of the season because he was injured with the hamstring, but any offensive coordinator that doesn't figure out a way to get this guy the ball is making a mistake.
Yeah, it seemed like there was more screens, more successful screens. I forget if the offensive line again is really come through lately. I saw a stat that I don't think this was from Sean Borman on Twitter. The Brian O'Neill hasn't given up a sack in 12 straight games, and with Elflein coming back, that was a huge thing. It took them a while to start gelling. But, this line has had so many different configurations, and now that they have their 5 guys, it seems like we said earlier, these holes are huge, and they seem to be dictating, the line of scrimmage and getting a push as opposed to, getting pushed back. QB sneaks worked. It was a really great game, despite the fact that, obviously I got to give my own
pat on the back for Brian O'Neill. I've been saying it for the beginning of the season. You guys scoffed at me, but
I'll take the L on that one. I was pissed, but in my defense, I was listening to the word of people that said he was a 2 to 3 year project, and that just didn't make any sense to me.
And I think he is. It'll probably be better, but yeah, I just thought the way our situation was the line that by the time the season gets rolling up to speed, he's going to be in there. So, but
do you think that they'll move him to left tackle eventually?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I don't know. I think they'll probably try to draft, a left tackle that they can install it, because if he's playing this well over there that you just described, giving up a sack and how long. I mean, why would you move him now? Because that's different footwork. You're all of a sudden going against maybe bigger and the better guys in the league over on that side of the thing. So I don't know. They would only do it if they don't have a better alternative.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard to say. I hope they don't. I hope they bolstered the left side.
Yeah, I mean, they get Easton back. They can draft a right.
And Reef has been playing better, hasn't he, since he's come back? And
he has. And Rembers has played better too. A lot of people pointed to the fact that maybe he should move back to tackle because he's been struggling so much as a guard, but he's improved as well. So, props to them. They had like I said, a ton of different configurations, a ton of injuries. They lost Sperano before the season started, got 2 new coaches. It's understandable that they would struggle, and it's really cool. It's really cool that they're getting things together seemingly.
So what
was the Thielen? I think.
Oh yeah,
the final
I'm sorry. Adam Thielen had 2 catches for 19 yards. Last week he had 5 for 70. Before that, 5 for 28. Should we be concerned? Definitely seeing more coverages, and he has. I have seen a lot of talk of that, but that should open things up for others. I think you said it last week. You were thinking Chad Beebe would be back. He was limited in practice and then didn't make it. Maybe having him as a third receiver in there might open things up. And Albick Robinson is opening it up.
17 catches, 5 touchdowns. You could very easily have 2 to 3 more. It's just in a Cheryl sense. If he was just if he was in Laquan Treadwell's body, he'd be a star. He doesn't fit the scheme for what they're looking for at the third spot, which is just a big-bodied guy who can pick up a first down across the middle once or twice a game.
But I've heard described as someone that fits really well because he opens up the top where you've got your possession receiver in Thielen. You've got Diggs who they call a Swiss Army knife. He can do it all, and they want his versatility. And they need someone with some speed to to pull the
That
guys.
is very, very true.
Yes, and so I think he does fit in that regard, and he does that. If you got that threat that someone can go deep, then you can't just clamp down on Diggs and Thielen. So I think he's really valuable in that regard. But you're right, he doesn't fit the role that Treadwell's supposed to, and Treadwell unfortunately doesn't fit.
And we'll see how that works with Stefanski moving forward. I mean, that's a very exciting prospect for the playoffs to have a guy that, you just let him burn down the sidelines, and he pulls that safety over, and you got all sorts of options there. It is great to see, though, that, like, considering how the season started, first of all, Thielen, crossing 100 catches, despite the fact that he's been, very limited these past few weeks, but that they were still able to put up that many points without relying on those two guys. I mean, obviously Diggs had a touchdown. I think he had about 49 yards or 43 yards or something. But, they have all sorts of options and weapons, and that's super encouraging as well. So
Thielen giveth, and the Thielen taketh away. He carried me to the regular season title in one league, and I had him in two leagues, and I'm out of the playoffs.
But you're in the finals in the Purple PTSD Vikings territory. Yeah. Who are you going against? I'm trying to find my phone.
I was the fourth place team in the regulation. I'm going against the Skull Bus, I think, which was the third place team.
Oh, Magic Skull Bus.
Yeah, so
I forget whose team that is. I cannot.
Andy, I think his name is. Andy. Believes. Anyway, who cares?
Who the hell is Andy?
No, it's Jordan.
Oh.
Yeah.
He won last year, and you won the year before, so this is like a huge thing.
No, I take it back. I beat Jordan this week by 2 points. So if he's listening, he's probably cussing me out right now. So anyway, that's fantasy football. That's not what we're here for. So, but anyway, I would love to see Chad Beebe get out there and see if he could
big time
put up a new wrinkle for them to figure out, because he's got a different skill set than the other receivers, and great hands, quick. He's not gonna burn you deep probably, but he's gonna be a nice safety valve for Cousins. That would, after being real close last week, hopefully he didn't have a setback, but I'm hoping that he will be up on Sunday. That would be.
Yes, I agree. And the question that I've asked you a million times on this show, because you have a lot more access than I do. For those that are new to the show, Joe has a press pass and has had one for a while. He's a mainstay over at TCO. Even before they built it, he would just hang out there in the fields. What is going on with Zylstra?
Well, he got hurt, but he's still playing. He's still playing special teams. But I heard someone say, and I don't know this because I've never talked to him, but the scuttlebutt was he was struggling early on to pick up the offense.
Yeah. Yep. And
maybe that'll change now since it's Stefanski and they've simplified it. But I think he's still making the game day roster, so he's obviously got talent. He's been a special teams player for him. So
they gave up a decent amount to get him. I mean, there was kind of a small bidding war for him.
Yeah, that's true. And they're still they're using him though, Joe. I mean, you got it. He's not being inactive for the game, so that's a good sign for him. So maybe
he had success up in Canada. Maybe he needs that 10-yard head start that they get every. Who knows? So we will be doing a post-game show a la Howard Stern on satellite radio on Periscope, about 10-15 minutes. If people want to join and ask us questions, we joined Periscope this week. It's been awesome. We've always looked for a way to get more fan activity on this show. It's kind of hard to do without a second computer and a second person.
You mean they're gonna take my takes and come back at me? Oh, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to go somewhere else.
On second thought, I am actually very nervous as well because I'm a hack. But
now, what happened on predictions last week?
Oh God. So yeah, predictions. You what?
I had 27-20. I think I had the Vikings winning, so I think I was 27. 41 minus 27 is 14, and 3 more in the. So I was 17 off. How about you, Joe?
I predicted 41-10. So
you did?
That was perfect, almost. So no, I think I was 28-20 23 or something stupid like that.
So I picked up a little more.
I know that you gained 4 points. I don't specifically remember how that happened. Also, for the over-unders, you were correct and I was incorrect. I had the under on Cousins with 0.5 interceptions, and I believe
he did that interception should be a 1.5 interception. My God, pick 6. Oh my God,
brutal. And you were the over, I believe, on
yes.
Cook was 70.5 yards.
No, it was 14.5 carries, and he had 19.
That's what it was. The week before it was 70 yards. So you picked up on that as well. Stay tuned. That was something clearly that I'm struggling to add. I'm going to do a better job this week. That was what Luke used to do for us on Purple Journal Podcast. So I'll have those over-unders up before the show so everyone on Twitter can submit their entry. If you are correct on your over-under, we enter your name into like a random number generator situation, and
we'll have those up on Friday, right?
Before the show,
yeah.
And then I'll post I'll refresh it a few times over the weekend, and if you're right, you end up getting a gnome if you're selected randomly, and so that's been really fun. The only thing we ask is that you take a selfie with the gnomes so we can share it to show people that we are actually sending these gnomes out. We do send them out about once a month, so that is something that we're hoping that you'll participate in. But we will be back on Friday. The Purple Journal Podcast is on hiatus. I do believe we'll be back next season. I was hanging out with Mr. Tyler Hagg, who is a major member of our sites, as well as does some podcasting with Adam Carlson of the Viking Age. His podcast is the Bleeding Purple Podcast. It's been around. I'm sure if you are listening to the show, you're familiar with that show because it's been around for a while. It's an institution as far as I'm concerned. He wants to join the show, which would be great because he's a really cool guy and he's got some really great perspective. So stay tuned for that, but definitely join our live chats as well during the game. Those are always super fun. They're going to be increasingly fun as the season progresses. And follow us on Periscope. I mean, we're basically everywhere. It's kind of fun, and it's also relatively narcissistic. But this has been Morning Joe's. Check out, if you're listening to this live, I'll post a link to our Periscope post-game Q&A on there. Otherwise, I will post a link to that video in the article for this. So if you listen to this show later in the week, after Tuesday, you can go to purpleptsd.com and or vikingsterritory.com and see me and Joe do our Q&A. So I really appreciate everyone's support. And catch you guys all on Friday. Skol.